Yes, sirree, here we go. A very good Sunday morning to you, my dear friends. Welcome to those of you joining us already and those of you who are still crawling out of bed. It's kind of early, 9 o'clock here in Grenada. Today happens to be the 5th day of April. Well into April already as we continue to face our challenges regarding Mr. Coronavirus, or Mr. COVID-19, as some people tend to call him. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. My heart goes out to those of you in the United States. I'm really, really saddened to see what's happening to you folks out there. And believe me, while it's nowhere near as bad here, we feel your pain. But this too shall pass. This too shall pass. Just in case you haven't figured it out, I'm George Grant, and thank you very much to those of you who are joining us this morning on YouTube. Actually, today is kind of historic. It's the first day that we are going out live on YouTube. We've been threatening to do this for some time now. Well, spontaneously, it suddenly happened. We are up on YouTube Live. And I just want to remind those of you who are already there to please, while you're on that site, hey, there's a little mosquito running around in here this morning. We'll get that little bugger yet. I do hope that you will click on the subscribe button there so that whenever we do one of these programs, you will be notified, okay? Thank you very much. And while you're in the process of doing that, you can spread the word around. Hey, George and his team, yes, sirree, his programs are up on YouTube. And it's where we're going to be spending most of our time from here on. Now, let's take a look at the rundown and see what we're going to get into over the next 3 hours this morning. As always, we shall begin with the buzz. In the buzz, you're going to hear the reading from the Holy Scriptures, which we do every Sunday morning to begin our program. We also end our program with another reading from the Holy Scriptures. And this morning, regrettably, you're not going to be hearing from Little Angel. Little Angel usually sends us her contributions late on Saturday night. But she has notified me that we are not going to be hearing from her today. Little Angel, just want to let you know, girl, that we miss you, we miss you, we miss you. Looking forward to seeing you back here next week. As far as the editorials are concerned, well, we do have the editorial, as we always do, from the New Today. And they are captioned. The one they put out on, that was on Friday, yeah? Friday, yeah. The one they put out on Friday is captioned, "Ease the Tension." It's a Calypsonian who had a calypso by that name, no? Ease the tension. Who was it, boy? Who was it? Oh, I'm going to go crazy now trying to figure out who that was. But, yeah. By the way, the New Today, because of everything that's been happening, all the businesses that have been shut down and so on and so forth, the New Today is affected by the state of emergency, really, very much so. They can't get their papers into and out of the country. I think their papers are printed in Trinidad, and obviously the airport's shut, so no go. Well, they have decided to put out an e-paper. So if you go to, I think it's the New Today Grenada.com, you can read their electronic version of their weekly newspaper. Okay? Check them out. Now, having said that, You will hear the editorial in just a wee bit. Ease the tension is what it's captioned, and obviously it all has to do with this current crisis, if you will, the coronavirus. We're not doing interviews per se. In fact, I don't remember the last time we did an interview, but it says here on the rundown, feature. Now, you may recall a few weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we had a team of people on here. We had Brian Pitt, we had Dr. Patrick Antoine, we had who is it? My goodness, I'm getting old. Alan Baczynski. We had Tessa Barry from Trinidad. And we were looking at charting the way forward. You know, after this whole coronavirus thing blows over, we're going to be in a bit of a mess for some time, I would imagine, some time to come. And rather than just dwelling on all the trouble that we're going through right now, I thought, hey, why don't we just start planning on the way forward? So that's what we did. We got this team together, and we did a segment which was captioned, The Corona Comeback, Charting the Way Forward. All right? Well, that was part one. Today, part two. Because with some help, I've been able to assemble a little team here this morning. And we're going to be looking at three areas in particular. One, agriculture. Two, spirituality. And three, economics. Okay? So, here is how we intend to do that. Okay. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. There's a gentleman in Trinidad who happens to be the dean of the Faculty of Food and Agriculture. He's at the St. Augustine campus of the University of the West Indies. His name is Professor Wayne Ganpat. And I found out about him through a friend of ours by the name of Tessa Barry. Those of you who've been following us, that's a name that's very common to you folks, Tessa Barry. And Tessa has arranged for Dr. Ganpat to appear this morning with us electronically. We're maintaining social distancing here, everybody. There's nobody sitting here with me this morning. Dr. Ganpat recently penned an article where he was bemoaning the lack of attention that is being given to agriculture. And he's not the only one. There are a lot of people who've been very concerned that, it seems like, not just here in Grenada, but we tend to throw all our eggs into one basket as far as the economy is concerned, and that is generally tourism, okay? So he's going to be expounding this morning on the importance that needs to be placed on tourism, on agriculture. You can't eat tourism. You're not going to eat them tourists when they go stay in a hotel or come off a cruise ship. But we have to feed ourselves, my dear friend. And we are going to need a change in mindset. Today, everybody seems to be obsessed with, their little devices and iPads and smartphones and laptops and what have you. And people are a little bit reluctant to get their hands back into the soil like you and I did when we were little teeny boppers. And the attitude of our authorities just doesn't help to instill any enthusiasm among the populace to get back into agriculture. Well, I'm hoping that the professor will change that somewhat this morning. Boy, I really, really do hope so. Okay. Now, he is just one of the people who will be joining us. Another one. Everybody in Grenada knows this gentleman, Bishop Clyde Harvey, Archbishop of the Diocese of St. George. Archbishop is somebody, I've only ever met this man, hey, 3 or 4 times, if that often. And I've just been fascinated by him. I listen to him in the media a lot. I find that whenever we get together, I always have the time for him. He always gets my attention. Because he seems to be somebody who's a very caring person. Very caring person. And he's not just one of those who goes and whoops. He thinks before he speaks. So I've asked him to provide some spiritual guidance, if you will, to us this morning. And he's going to be joining us too. And by the way, these guys are supposed to be joining us at 10 o'clock. The third person is a lady. I have not met her. By the way, I have not met Professor Ganpat. At least I don't think so. The third person is a lady by the name of Dr. Marlene Atz. And get this, A-T-T-Z-S. Atz. Dr. Marlene Atz. She is a developmental economist and also associated with the University of the West Indies, Trinidad. And a lot of people have been wondering what's going to happen with the economy. I mean, in the United States, you hear about how many billions of dollars that are being put out by the government to take care of the unemployed and all of that. Well, as far as I know, we don't even have unemployment insurance here. So a lot of people are wondering, how are we going to make ends meet? To be honest with you, I'm just one of those people who do believe that our economy was in the shambles anyway, even before the virus, even though we've been told the economy is booming. I don't believe that. Never did. Never did. And I'm hoping that we can start to restructure this economy of ours. It's going to involve some change in mindset, and it's not always easy to do that. The old saying, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. Yeah, I guess that's going to kick in here. But anyhow, we're going to try this morning to continue where we left off 2 weeks ago. Put in Grenada on a path where things will be brighter, better for all of us. I hope. The reason why I say hope is because, I pray a lot, and I don't believe that the economy is everything, or agriculture is everything, or tourism is everything. No. I believe that our God should be our everything. Yeah, I guess I'm kind of old-timeish, but I know what He's brought me to in my 68 years on this planet. I'm very confident He's going to bring me through this as well. I was telling somebody just this past week, a lot of people right now are very edgy about this virus. because of the degree of uncertainty as to where we're going, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I'll tell you, I can't tell you the last time my heart has been at peace as it is right now. I could throw myself on the bed at night, and before I hit the sack, I'm asleep. Peace. Because I do believe that God is in control. What the heck else is there for me to worry about? Seems like a lot of people are afraid they're going to die. They're going to die. Oh my God, this thing's bad. It's coming. It's coming. It's here. I always have told some friends over the past week, it's amazing how many people want to go to heaven, but they're all afraid to die. Once you can overcome that fear, my friends, your heart will be filled with a level of peace that you have never imagined in your entire life. Been there. Okay. So, I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it for the rundown this morning. Let's, what time is it now? 17 minutes after the hour. Let's take our first little break here, and we're going to return with the buzz.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Co-op Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, neighbor.
Here's the bill I asked you to pay for me.
How did you get your electricity bill to be so low?
For one, we size our transformers just for what we need. And we unplug transformers, chargers, and other devices when they're not in use. We also replaced our light bulbs with LEDs.
They burn less energy, right?
Much less. I even replaced the seal on my refrigerator door to keep the cold air in.
And Grenlec is always advising us not to open the fridge too often.
That's right. And my family washes and irons in bulk.
With fuel prices changing all the time, how do you know if it is working?
We pay attention to the usage history table. Over time, our average usage has decreased.
So while Grenada can't control fuel prices, I can conserve energy and save money.
GRENADAB, energizing our Grenada.
Conveniently located in the Grand Anse Shopping Center, for over 40 years, Food Fair has provided quality service at affordable prices. Now, grocery shopping is made easier and more convenient from the Food Fair web store.
Hey, babe. Listen, I need you to go down to Food Fair to get some groceries.
Alright, no problem. Right away.
Thanks, babe. What are you doing? You're supposed to be going Food Fair to get a grocery, man.
I am, but didn't you know you can order your groceries online from the Food Fair web store?
Are you serious?
Of course. All you have to do is just to log on to www.foodfair.gd with credit card in hand, and with an order of $100 or more, Food Fair Grenada will deliver up to 3 miles away. And you don't even have to worry about your information, you know. Their safety measures are excellent.
So hold on. You just order online and Food Fair will deliver to you?
Yep.
Oh, baby, better hurry up and order, man.
I already did. They should be here any minute now.
Enjoy easy online shopping anytime from your home or office from the Food Fair web store. Food Fair, where you can fill your baskets without emptying your pockets.
Okay, folks, just before we go any further, I have just been really moved here by the names that I'm seeing on YouTube this morning. Let me pay a visit here to the page for just a bit. First of all, Dennis Perkins. And where is Dennis this morning? Yeah, he's in London. Dennis says, good morning, George and class. It's a lovely day here in London, sun and blue skies, but confined to barracks still. Dennis and his wife, Christine. Dennis, yeah, you know, I did go out 2 days ago. When was it? I think it was on Friday. Yeah. Friday morning, I found out that one of the supermarkets here, Ando's down on the Carnage, was open until noon. As far as I knew, all the supermarkets were closed. That's what we've been told by the police. But at about 11:30, somebody advised me that Ando's would be open until noon. Well, let me tell you, in a heartbeat, I was down there on the Carnage. Get down to the Carnage, and obviously you have to fall in line, okay? People are not maintaining the social distance, but Georgie Porgy made sure that we stayed a long way out. When you finally do get into the store, the cupboards are bare. I mean, B-A-R-E, bare. But within an hour, I was actually back home. So yeah, I know how you guys feel in lockdown. Nowhere near as bad here, but I could just imagine your lines as well. Okay, so says Dennis. Brian Aline says, good morning, George, to you. Good morning to you, Brother George, and all your viewers and listeners. Trini62. I have not seen Trini62 before. At least I don't think so. Maybe under a different name, but also saying good morning. And this is the one that really, really moved me. Dear friend by the name of Peter Burnett. And Peter is in Switzerland. I think he better be in Switzerland right now. Peter, it is such an honor seeing you. I haven't seen or really heard from you, but it's nice. It's nice to know that you're there. Thank you very much, sir. Peter says, good morning, George. Hope you had a relaxing days off. Good to have you back. Yeah, Peter, I really needed some downtime, and from late on Wednesday night, I decided, that's it. Take some time off. Made sure I got lots and lots and lots of sleep, and drank a lot of water. Yeah. Boyd Bishop saying, good morning, Noel from Brooklyn. Nice to see you on YouTube, George. Well, it's just great to be here. I've been promising this for a while, Peter, and it's finally happened. Still have our share of challenges to deal with, but you know me, tough cookie, gonna keep on trucking, keep on fighting. We'll make it. Kipling Francis is sending blessings to everyone. Van Smart is saying good morning to George and Grenada. Dennis Perkins says, I can see the need for the curfew, but by only allowing people to shop on certain days, won't they condense the same amount of shoppers into a smaller time frame, making it more dangerous? Good question, Dennis, but I'll be the first to admit that a lot of the actions taken are actions that have not been properly thought out, and that's the talk on the street. There are some people who are dead set against the fact that there is a state of emergency and so on and so forth. And I'm happy to report that even though there are people who may be against the state of emergency, they will also be the first to admit to you that something had to be done, especially the curfew. The state of emergency was in effect, but coming after that was the curfew. And the reason being, there are a lot of boneheads out there who just totally flaunted the state of emergency. Something had to be done. I think where a lot of the resentment comes from is that they went ahead and did this without following proper procedure. Apparently, there's a process that you're supposed to undergo when declaring the state of emergency. And especially in the context of the flagrant disregard that we have been showing for our Constitution in recent times. When they violated this one as well, I mean, people's ears just went, you can't blame them. You can't blame them. But like I said, by and large, the people who are up in arms are not up in arms because the government did something. They'll be the first to tell you that something had to be done. And a lot of critics of the government have come out and saluted them for taking action. Amen. Give credit where credit is due, man. Come on. Including me. So, yeah. Chill, people. Chill. Okay. So I think that's it on YouTube so far this morning. Let me see here. Okay. It's going to take a while before you guys get used to the new platform, but hang in there. We'll get used to it. And just bear in mind, I've got you guys coming at me here on YouTube over there. I've got you guys coming here on, let's see here, on, WhatsApp. And I'm still operating alone here, okay? So just bear with us. Now, let me take another quick break. Hold on. Claude Victor says, hope it wasn't our session that made you sick. Good to know that you're well, coming through clear. Well, Claude Victor, Claude, it's always such a pleasure to be sitting in this chair, whether it's a Sunday morning or a weekday morning. Let me tell you, no, and you guys didn't make me sick. No. Actually, not being with you, I wasn't with you on Thursday and Friday night. And let me tell you, that wasn't easy. I relish coming and sitting here with you guys. I really do. So yeah, let me take another quick breaky poo here, and we'll come back with this week's editorial. As I mentioned to you, Little Angel is not going to be chiming in this week, but we do hope to see her back next week.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate, Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Together with you, our customers, we energize our community.
Together with you, we energize our economy.
We are working together to give our nation a better tomorrow.
With you, we energize our future. Together, we energize our nation.
Thank you for partnering with us as we energize our Spice Island.
GRENLEC, energizing our Grenada.
Calling all vehicle owners, inspection and licensing continues, and at Hubbard's we want you to be ready. From February 16th to March 31st, registration numbers 2,501 to 5,000 with single registration letter, or registration numbers 251 to 500 with plural registration letters will receive 11% off new torque tires and POWERMAX batteries. Don't get caught unprepared. Visit us today at the Motor Department in Mount Gay or the Tire Bay in Grand Anse near to the building supplies.
Okie dokie, folks. Let's see here. 29 minutes away from the hour. 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock is that point where we're expecting to start assembling a little team here this morning. Bishop Clyde Harvey, Professor Wayne Ganpat, and developmental economist Dr. Marlene Atz Yaman. All three are going to be up on the screen here. Hopefully, let's keep up. You know what things are like. We did a dry run yesterday, and we got them all in there. So let's hope that things hold up again this morning. Just before I move on here, Dennis Perkins says, "I like the YouTube. I find it great." Well, that is great. Thank you so much. Now, that's the encouragement that I need. I've been planning on doing this for a long time. And finally, last night, time to program the system here, said, you know what? This is it. No more strategizing, no more hoping, no more planning. Let's just take the plunge and do it. That's what we did. That's why you guys are seeing us this morning. Trini62 says, the problem in Grenada is that they've been reactive to everything. He says, you put a 24-hour curfew and restrict people to their village without a plan in place for getting food supplies to people? Who does that? Trini. You know, one way or another, anything these guys do will be criticized. I'm not saying don't criticize, because let me tell you, a lot of the criticism these guys are undergoing right now, they deserve, and they have brought it upon themselves. Yes, sir-ree. At the same time, be real. You try and put yourselves in the shoes of the current administration. You'll probably be wetting your diapers every 2 steps you take. I don't envy these guys. Yeah, some of them have become very arrogant, very belligerent. Yeah, let them have it. But be realistic. When under the kind of pressure that these guys must be right now, you can expect that there will be slip-ups. They're human, like you and me. There will be slip-ups. Bear with them. And remember, every time you point the finger, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 pointing back at you. So yeah, go easy on them. Someday maybe your turn. Okay, now, where the heck are we? Yes. Time to get into today's edition of The Buzz. Let's begin, as we always do, with a reading from the Holy Scripture. Believers in humble circumstances ought to take pride in their high position, but the rich should take pride in their humiliation. since they will pass away like a wild flower. For the sun rises with scorching heat and withers the plant. Its blossom falls and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich will fade away, even while they go about their business. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because, having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. That reading, by the way, came to you from the book of James, the first chapter, James, verses 9, 10, 11, and 12. 9 to 12, okay? Okay. Now, as I mentioned, nothing from Little Angel today. So, we're going to take a quick little break, and then we will return with the editorial which appeared in Friday's edition of The New Today.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate, Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Together with you, our customers, we energize our community.
Together with you, we energize our economy.
We are working together to give our nation a better tomorrow.
With you, we energize our future. Together, we energize our nation.
Thank you for partnering with us as we energize our Spice Island.
GRENLEC, energizing our Grenada.
Calling all vehicle owners, inspection and licensing continues, and at Hubbard's we want you to be ready from February 16th to March 31st. Registration numbers 2,501 to 5,000 with single registration letter, or registration numbers 251 to 500 with plural registration letters will receive 11% off new torque tires and POWERMAX batteries. Don't get caught unprepared. Visit us today at the Motor Department in Mountgay or the TYRE Bay in Grand Anse near to the building supplies.
Okie dokie, folks. Time's now moved on to 20 minutes away from 10 o'clock. Let's turn now to the editorial which appeared in Friday's edition of The New Today. It is captioned, Ease the Tension. The New Today is not surprised at the spillover that is taking place right now, following the incident at Boca on Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning, in which a known troublemaker, Come On Charles, was killed. It is not the intention of this newspaper to lay blame on anyone for the killing, but to allow the law to run its rightful course. However, we are more concerned with this growing state of lawlessness in the country that has been going unchecked for many years. In recent months, the New Today has often stated that Grenada is now a lawless state and pointed to a number of instances as clear evidence of this growing phenomenon. Both the Prime Minister of the country and the police are now being openly threatened with acts of violence in an apparent attempt at retaliation for the Boca killing. There is no evidence produced by anyone in the public at this point in time that Charles was taken down by a police bullet. The truth is that the politicians have contributed to the growing decadence in our society. It cannot be disputed that several politicians should take a lot of the blame for going into bed with these elements in the underworld of drug dealing to get their support and vote for general elections that are held every 5 years on the island. It is the same politicians who give these people cash money every 5 years to cook on the side of the road as part of their electioneering strategies and tactics. The same politicians take large sums of cash money from the more affluent dons in the country for electioneering purposes. The New Today has picked up information that the victim in the Boca shooting is a law unto himself and is often seen on 4 roads in the city, buying drugs and using it in the open. It is also well known that the same 4 roads is one of the garrison areas under the control of the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Member of Parliament for the town of St. George, the Honorable Peter David. There are credible reports that during the 2018 election campaign, that a known activist of the minister went into 4 roads and distributed a wash of money, like we say, to the boys on the blocks. It is our understanding that this money was for the cooking of food by the boys and for support on the day of the election. There is no evidence that the money came directly from the pocket of the MP for the town, but it was being handed out by one of his known activists. The police are fully aware of all the unlawful acts taking place in that particular garrison and other areas within close proximity, and never seem to be able to catch the culprits and confiscate the drugs that are peddled in these areas. The New Today would like to suggest to our police officers that they need to be extremely careful in this period of the state of emergency, and especially the manner in which they carry out their functions in their attempt to maintain law and order. There are many persons on the island who live on a daily basis from hand to mouth and depend on getting a meal from someone else who might use them to run errands from time to time throughout the day. These are the real vulnerable people in society and leave their homes each and every day of the week to make a living. The police should be mindful of the saying that a hungry man is an angry man and might have a family to feed. This newspaper applauds and gives full support to the statement made by Acting Commissioner of Police Edmund Martin of the need for his officers in exercising the full force of the law in the current state of emergency to use discretion at all times in these circumstances. The police should be mindful of a situation in which a farmer is living in point A and has to go 500 meters away to his land. But they still want him to walk 2 miles away to the nearest police station to get permission to go to his land, and then walk back another 2 miles with this permission document to enter his own lands. The New Today would expect police officers stationed in a particular location to know the people and their various professions in their local communities. This is an appropriate situation in which a police officer should be able to use his personal discretion, since he's not dealing with a suspected thief, but a real farmer. This is no time for insensitive police officers to abuse the powers granted to the security forces in a state of emergency. Unfortunately, the Boca killing has resulted in a charged atmosphere in the country, and no attempt should be made to escalate it in this state of emergency, but to help ease the situation. That bell rings is the editorial, which appeared in Friday's edition of the New Today. Okay, let's see here. Where are we? Anthony Howard is testing new waters on YouTube. Good morning, Mr. Howard. Good to see you. Okay. Georgie Porgy is, let's see here, running just a little bit ahead of time. My guest is supposed to be checking in anywhere from now until 10 o'clock. And we gave them a 10-minute time frame. And, yes, I think I see here that Dr. Axe has already chimed in and getting her picture. And then we expect to be joined very shortly by Bishop Clyde Harvey and also Professor Wayne Ganpat. UE. You know, I found out all these three people, they know each other. I didn't know that when I started putting together the segment. But you can bet it's going to be a fun session this morning. Not just fun, but also very informative, and I hope will be the nucleus, if you will, of a sort of a think tank, you know, where we get together and come up with ways of moving forward rather than just sitting there and whining and whining and whining and complaining and what have you. Claude Victor says, clearly the opinion writer is a logical thinker. Is there no such similar person in leadership? Oh, yeah, Claude. Go ahead, ask the tough questions. You ain't getting answers from moi. Okay. Folks, break time.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Co-op Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, neighbor.
Here's the bill I asked you to pay for me.
How did you get your electricity bill to be so low?
For one, we size our transformers just for what we need. And we unplug transformers, chargers, and other devices when they're not in use. We also replaced our light bulbs with LEDs.
They burn less energy, right?
Much less. I even replaced the seal on my refrigerator door to keep the cold air in.
And Grenlec is always advising us not to open the fridge too often.
That's right. And my family washes and irons in bulk.
With fuel prices changing all the time, how do you know if it is working?
We pay attention to the usage history table. Over time, our average usage has decreased.
So while Grenada can't control fuel prices, I can conserve energy and save money.
GRENADAB, energizing our Grenada.
Calling all vehicle owners, inspection and licensing continues, and at Hubbard's we want you to be ready. From February 16th to March 31st, registration numbers 2,501 to 5,000 with single registration letter, or registration numbers 251 to 500 with plural registration letters will receive 11% off new torque tires and POWERMAX batteries. Don't get caught unprepared. Visit us today at the Motor Department in Mount Gay or the TYRE Bay in Grand Anse near to the building supplies.
Alrighty, folks, while I wait on the rest of the gang to show up, I just want to share with you a press release that I received last night from WhatsApp Caribbean. It's about LEAX. And boy, this is just going to compound the already difficult situation we're facing here in the Caribbean. Regional airline LEAX will suspend all passenger services for the next 14 days due to the impact of COVID-19. The airline will only operate charters and cargo flights during this period. Chief Executive Officer Julie Reefer Jones explained that the imposition of travel bans and border closures had ground regional travel to a halt. Quote, "We try to maintain a limited schedule. However, the present conditions make this impossible," she stated. As a result, the company has implemented a temporary suspension of passenger services from April 4th, that's yesterday, okay, for a period of 14 days in the first instance. The suspension will be reviewed after the first 14 days. The airline has issued a travel advisory for all affected passengers. Passengers booked during that period of suspension will automatically have their bookings canceled and will receive full credit. Passengers will be able to rebook as soon as the airline resumes passenger services. Mrs. Reefer Jones acknowledged that this was an extremely challenging time for the airline, its employees, and other stakeholders. She disclosed that the airline had implemented several other measures, including temporary layoffs and reduced working hours. In addition, the airline's board of directors is in direct communication with regional governments to secure support packages that would see the company maintain limited schedule when the situation allows. Liat will continue to review the rapidly changing situation and remains committed to ensuring that our region is connected. The airline is grateful to our staff, customers, and stakeholders for their loyalty and understanding during this unprecedented period. That, my dear friends, is the text from WhatsApp Caribbean about it. Okay. Let's see. Folks, you got 2 minutes, and I haven't seen Wayne, and I haven't seen Bishop Hartley, but I know that I'm seeing the picture there from Marlene. Yeah, I'm not seeing Marlene, but I'm seeing her picture, and the camera's on. So let's just hang in there for a little bit and see what happens. Oh, thank you very much, Jackie O. Jackie O is reminding us that today is Palm Sunday. Jackie O says, good morning, happy Palm Sunday. Well, thank you. Thank you, Jackie O. Oh, let me just scroll around here and see if there's anything exciting that I need to share with you guys while we kill a little time here. Okay. And that's going to do it for a little while. Okay. So, what we're actually waiting on, folks, is we're trying to get this little group together. I spoke to all three of these people yesterday, by the way. And by three people, I mean, first of all, the Archbishop of the Diocese of St. George, that's Bishop Clive Harvey. The other person is a developmental economist who is with the UE campus in Trinidad, St. Augustine, Dr. Marlene Axe. And the third person is the Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture, Food and Agriculture, and that's Professor Wayne Ganpot. These folks, three areas: spirituality, the economy, and agriculture. We're hoping to, get together and put our heads together, bounce off some ideas, which we do hope that those who can make a difference, those in authority, will be listening to, and maybe learn from some of these ideas. And hey, they may have some ideas that they want to bounce off you as well. And we'd be happy to hear from them 24/7. We're also going to start opening up our phone lines again, one at a time. Hey, we did promise you that we'd go to YouTube, which we've now done, but we did also promise you that we're going to start opening up the phone lines, and that too is coming. It's not going to work this morning, but it is coming. So hang in there. It's always something to look forward to. Talk about resilient, man. Huh? Talk about resilient. Kind of makes me proud to be Canadian. Let's see here. Jackie O says, I was confused this morning when I saw the program was on YouTube. I thought the medication had me... Jackie O. I thought the medication had me acting a fool. Then I looked on Peter Bishop's page, and I was good to go. No, it's not the medication, Jackie. It's not the medication. By the way, if I'm not mistaken, Jackie O is one of those people, and I guess I'm free to mention this because it was on Facebook. She's one of those people who was hit by the virus. I know a couple others who have been hit as well. And for them, terrifying. Let not your heart be troubled, my dear friend. Let not your heart be troubled. Claude Victor says, a friend asked me how impactful COVID-19 will be to small islands like Grenada. Clearly, for countries with strained budgets, like those in the Caribbean, this is a night that will be reverberating for a while. He says, oddly enough, without prompt, he brought up agriculture and the impact of excessive imports. Yeah, true, Clyde, true. You know, well, we're going to talk about it this morning, I'm sure, but it would be nice if you could see that article that was penned by Professor Ganpop. Really. You know, we keep saying that when this whole thing blows over, the world will be living in an environment where we have a totally different mindset. In order to survive, you will have to have a total mindset, reset of your mindset. But I'm hopeful that we are resilient enough. I mean, look at it. We came through Ivan. I haven't forgotten that. I came through Janet. I came through Ivan. You know what? We're going to come through this too. Come on. We are going to come through this too. Okay. Bob Marishow is the next up to test. He's testing YouTube. Well, Bob, you're working. You're coming through loud and clear. Congratulations, sir. You guys are slowly finding out that we're out there on YouTube this morning. Nice to see you all. Okay. So, Georgie Porgy is waiting. Okay. Hold on a sec. Hold on a sec. I think I see her now. Let me see. Yeah? Hello? Dr. X?
Hi, George.
How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good, good, good.
I'm great. How you doing?
Let's try and get your face in the middle. We want to see that beautiful face. Come on, get your face in the middle there. Tilt your monitor back a little bit. There she is. There she is. Boy, you look like Sunday morning. Good to see you, Doc.
Thank you, George.
Have you seen or heard from Dr. Ganpot, Professor Ganpot?
No, I haven't, but I will send him a WhatsApp message now just to ensure that he's on. But I thought I heard you say just now that he was actually online.
No, I haven't seen him. You're the only person I've seen. By the way,
all right, okay.
Dr. Atz is in Trinidad this morning, and let's just see if she gets a response from Professor Ganpat. If she doesn't, we'll just get the conversation started and then wait until Bishop Harvey shows up.
Yeah, I sent him a message, so let's see if he picks that up.
Okay. So first, while we await Bishop Harvey and Professor Gantine, let's learn a little bit about Dr. Marlene Atz. I had to spell your name this morning to make sure these people realized that George was not kidding. Attzs. Let's find out a bit about you, Marlene.
Okay, first and foremost, good morning to you, George, to all of your listeners, both in Grenada and throughout the world, because I understand that your reach is truly global. And that word global has taken on a different significance for us in the Caribbean over the last couple of months. But I just want to say good morning to all of your listeners and those who might be viewing. As you correctly said, I'm a development economist. I am from Trinidad and Tobago. I've been working in the region and internationally with some multilateral agencies for at least 20 years. So I have a pretty good sense of the Caribbean because they say charity begins at home. So I tend to, in my early years as a professional, I did a lot of work throughout the Caribbean, well, Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. And while I'm an economist, I'm trained as an economist. Primarily, my focus has been on looking at issues of development as the impact on Caribbean people. So I've looked at, and you mentioned Ivan, one of my research areas is looking at the economics of disasters. So I would have spent many of my formative years looking at the impact of hurricanes on Caribbean countries, on livelihoods, on the tourism sector, on economies generally. And then I would have essentially used that knowledge to help me do research on and gain a better understanding on how disasters impact on people throughout the Caribbean. So you look at the impact of the intersection between gender and disasters, how disasters impact on development in the larger sense. Because what I've always tried to do in my work is to ensure that people understand that development is not simply about the economic indicators. So people will hear a conversation about a country being very developed in the same breath as talking about the per capita GDP or how much earning power that country has, for example. But development really is an intersection of a whole host of issues for which people are at the center. So in the context of the current disaster that we're facing, and as I reflect more and more on it, we need to, I think, recognize for us in the Caribbean, I mean, the rest of the world has its own challenges. So we see what is happening in the US, in the UK, in Spain, in Italy, etc., and in China. But I think we need to put our minds in a space where we see COVID-19 as a disaster in our economies. And when I say in our economies, not simply on economic growth and economic activity, but how it can impact on our people. So that's one of the reasons I like the group of us that you've put together this Sunday morning, is that it really, I think, captures all of those elements that I think are useful in having a conversation around development and how COVID-19 can impact on us from a developmental perspective. So there is the social dimension, there is the economic dimension, there is the individual well-being, there is the livelihood dimension, there is the spiritual dimension, there are issues of inequality. I was reflecting as I always do when I have to do interviews, I was reflecting on getting my thoughts together. And when we speak about COVID-19, there is all of this concept of social distancing and washing your hands and sanitizing. And implicit in that really is a reinforcement of social inequalities, believe it or not, because we're assuming that persons live in circumstances where they can actually social distance. They have enough space to stand 6 feet apart. We're assuming that people live in circumstances where they have access to water, where they can wash their hands regularly. We're assuming that people have the financial wherewithal to buy sanitizers, even if you have to make the homemade sanitizers, that they have the wherewithal to do that. So I think as I welcome the opportunity to participate in your show this morning, because it allows for us, I think, to have a conversation around COVID-19 and development in the broader sense and what it means for us as Caribbean people. And of course, infusing in that some of the economic dimensions, the hardcore economic issues in terms of how our economies are going to navigate this particular storm, this particular disaster that we found ourselves in the middle of as being part of the global village, which is why I kind of tongue-in-cheek made reference to your use of the word global. I mean, COVID-19 really is a manifestation of what globalization can in fact do for economies such as ours.
Marlene, thank you very much for that opening salvo. I think that's the reason why we're so looking forward to hearing your ideas this morning, because I believe that you have an awful lot to contribute to this discourse. In preparation for this morning's program, I did put together a very, very brief introduction to Marlene Katz, and I'd like to share that with our audience before I get into my first questions here. She's an advisor, pro-vice chancellor, and campus principal, and that's down at UE St. Augustine. A development economist, and she joined the university community way back in 1998 and has served as a lecturer, head of the Department of Economics, and deputy dean of the Faculty of Social Services. Sustainable Economic Development Unit, a specialized research unit in the Department of Economics. Sustainable development is one of Dr. ANSE's key areas of research. Now, Marlene, somebody like yourself you're a development economist, you're very, very familiar with the Caribbean economy. And as this whole crisis unfolds, I would imagine that your brain's been working overtime. My goodness. We're going to have a lot of work to do here when this thing starts blowing over. What is your primary focus at this point in time? Are you looking at certain areas that need to be addressed as priorities? Are you just looking at what you hope to accomplish in the end, say 10 years from now? What are you looking at?
Okay, George, before I get into that, two quick things. Wayne is experiencing some challenges, but he's working on it to get on as soon as possible.
Okay.
And just to correct, I'm the advisor to the campus principal. I'm not the pro-vice chancellor. I'm one of his advisors.
Okay. Thank you.
So I use my academic background to provide strategic support. My particular portfolio for the campus principal is to provide strategic support in terms of how we do what we do, and to help with help inform and advise on some of those decisions that he makes. What is occupying my mind at this time? I suppose I can put it into three buckets, probably two, but I will expand on the buckets, as it were. So the first thing I alluded to was the social dimensions. I think we're very focused on the big pictures. And when I say we, I'm saying, collectively, I think we're focusing on the big pictures. So in Grenada, there was an economic stimulus that Prime Minister Mitchell announced a few weeks ago. In Trinidad and Tobago, the same thing. And I suspect in many of the other islands in the Caribbean, economic stimulus packages have been announced, not in the order of magnitude as what was announced in the United States or what would have been obtained, what would have applied in the UK or Spain or any one of those other countries, because we simply cannot afford that kind of money. Those are sums of money. So when you talk about how much of almost $3 trillion US as part of the stimulus package. That is not any kind of conversation that we in the Caribbean have the capacity to engage in because of our economic circumstances, and we can talk more about those circumstances as the morning progresses. So my concern is in one part in terms of the economic side of things, how COVID-19 will impact on our economies. And again, as the morning rolls out, that conversation will peel off the various layers. So there is tourism in Grenada, there is oil and gas and COVID-19 in Trinidad and Tobago. There's tourism in some of the other islands. Guyana is now, tottering on the edge of being a commodity-based economy with their oil finds. So there is that economic conversation. But included in that conversation has to be where we started our economic, how our economies were managing or not managing pre-COVID-19. So we know generally that all of our economies have fairly high debt to GDP ratios, which means that we have what economists call fiscal space. We have very little space to allow us to make some of the decisions that can help us stabilize during this economic crisis. So even as our respective governments have been dipping into coffers and incurring more debt to present those stimulus packages that they've spoken about in their respective territories, we know that is going to come at a cost, and it is going to come at a cost greater, lesser to some extent. So if you look at the tourism-based economies, they're going to be grappling with the impact of COVID-19 for a long time to come, because the countries from which our tourists come primarily are the UK, the US, and Europe. So it means that persons in those economies that are themselves struggling will find it difficult, or they would be hard-pressed to want to travel to the Caribbean. So that is one side of it in terms of the demand side for tourism. But then there is another aspect of COVID-19 that concerns me in terms of the vulnerable in our societies. And in my opening salvo, I made mention of the assumptions behind the protocols that are being widespread, that are being disseminated widely about COVID-19. Wash your hands, social distancing, use hand sanitizers, etc. In the Caribbean, many of our countries have people who are living have significant or not insignificant numbers of people who are living below the poverty line. So for all of us, our poverty levels are in double digits. Some are more frighteningly higher double digits than in other countries. So it means that some people in our countries are starting off at a disadvantage. There are those of us who can practice social distancing. There are those of us who can buy hand sanitizers when they're available. There are those of us who can afford to wash our hands several times a day, or every 10 minutes, or every 5 minutes as the protocol requires and based on our circumstances. But for those people who are living below the poverty line means something. It means that they're either working poor, which means they're living from paycheck to paycheck, and the paycheck is hardly ever sufficient to help them navigate under the best of circumstances. And then you have those who have no paycheck, who rely on social services and social support, who may not be able to engage in or follow some of these protocols that are being shared widely. And you ask yourselves, when you look at the maps, the respective country mappings of the incidence of COVID-19, persons who have been identified as ill, persons who you do some contact tracing and you see some areas where there are no cases, probably because they've not been discovered or because they are off the grid, so to speak. So they may be far removed from the nearest health center where they can go and get tested. So to me, there are two two big issues that are coming out at me during COVID-19. One, the economics, of course, which one cannot ignore because everything else, our ability to provide social services and support for vulnerable persons in our society, is premised on how active our economy is and how much we're able to earn income. So that whole notion of GDP and economic activity is important because it is the platform on which everything else rolls out. But I am hopeful that we do not get too consumed in the economic side of things that we forget some of the other dimensions that are equally important. Those vulnerable people in our society. And I'm not simply talking about the aged and those people who have pre-existing conditions that the literature on COVID-19 tells us these persons are in fact vulnerable. But I'm talking about that other layer of vulnerable, that other layer and very significant layer, as it were, of persons who simply cannot afford to engage in some of the preventive measures and mitigation measures that are being shared. So those are my two primary concerns. And then, of course, there are a whole host of things other than that. The psychological impacts that flow from the social well-being impacts that flow from all of these things. But as I said, I know some of my other colleagues on this morning's discussion will share and articulate some of those views.
All right. I'll tell you what, let me take a quick little break here, and then we're going to come back with a comment from social media out there, and hopefully by then we will also be joined by Wayne and the rest of the gang. Hold on.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Co-op Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, neighbor.
Here's the bill I asked you to pay for me.
How did you get your electricity bill to be so low?
For one, we size our transformers just for what we need. And we unplug transformers, chargers, and other devices when they're not in use. We also replaced our light bulbs with LEDs.
They burn less energy, right?
Much less. I even replaced the seal on my refrigerator door to keep the cold air in.
And Grenlec is always advising us not to open the fridge too often.
That's right. And my family washes and irons in bulk.
With fuel prices changing all the time, how do you know if it is working?
We pay attention to the usage history table. Over time, our average usage has decreased.
So while Grenada can't control fuel prices, I can conserve energy and save money.
GRENADAB, energizing our Grenada.
Calling all vehicle owners, inspection and licensing continues, and at Hubbard's we want you to be ready. From February 16th to March 31st, registration numbers 2,501 to 5,000 with single registration letter, or registration numbers 251 to 500 with plural registration letters will receive 11% off new torque tires and POWERMAX batteries. Don't get caught unprepared. Visit us today at the Motor Department in Mount Gay or the TYRE Bay in Grand Anse near to the building supplies.
Alrighty, folks, we are back with our guests. I say guest because we're expecting two more in the person of Bishop Clyde Harvey and also Professor Wayne Ganpat from the University of the West Indies in Trinidad. Looking at you on the screen right now is Dr. Marlene Atz. And Marlene is a developmental economist. She's affiliated with the UWI down in Trinidad. By the way, Marlene, I see here that we've been joined on Facebook by somebody named Adele Zaira from Trinidad. I don't know if you know Adele, but anyhow, Adele is with us. And there's a comment that came in on social media just before we went to the break from Ken Lewis. And he says, that's so off base for many. Hold on a minute. He says, lots of Caribbean governments and CARICOM feel the follow fashion needs to make some statement about economics, as have been done in the United States and other developed countries. That is so off base for many reasons. We don't even have enough monies to deal with the basics of health crises. Where did we get the money to deal with the secondary economic crises? You want to respond to that?
Well, I can't speak for all of the governments, of course. In fact, I can't speak for any of them. What I can do is share that what happens at a time like this is that many of the multilaterals, so the IDB, the IMF, the World Bank, and of course the Caribbean Development Bank, the Andean Development Bank, several of these multilateral agencies have funds that they make available to countries, and the funds are either in the form of a grant or, of course, in the form of a loan. And I know certainly in the case of, if I can just speak for the case of Trinidad and Tobago for a second, the Minister of Finance in Trinidad and Tobago indicated that he received offers from CAF, the Andean Development Bank, from the IDB, and I think one other multilateral agency that escapes me at the moment. But in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, we also have something called our Heritage and Stabilization Fund, which is a fund that was established to essentially put aside some of the earnings that we got from the oil and gas sector. It is a kind of what we call sovereign wealth fund that many countries that are natural resource rich, and I'm using rich in inverted commas, that are heavily dependent on natural resources, they put aside when the price of a barrel of oil or price of gas or any kind of natural resource is extremely high, you essentially put aside some of that rent, the money that you earn, the revenue that you earn from those natural resources, you put aside some for a rainy day. So Trinidad and Tobago started the Heritage and Stabilization Fund back in 2000, and I forget when. And that is meant to be a buffer. As the name implies, it is meant to provide support for heritage issues as well as support for stabilization issues. So if in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, you premise your national budget on a price of a barrel of oil of $60 a barrel, and the price of a barrel of oil plummets for whatever reason to $40 a barrel, that shortfall that you would experience in terms of your revenues as opposed to your expenditures, because you'll be spending on the basis of $60 a barrel, but you'll actually be earning income on the basis of $40 a barrel. The stabilization part of the fund allows for you to draw down from that fund to kind of meet that shortfall, so to speak. That's putting it in a kind of oversimplistic way. So Trinidad and Tobago has something called the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. The challenge that Trinidad and Tobago has, however, is because we're facing COVID-19 and we are also facing plummeting oil prices. So the price, our last budget that was read in September last year, October last year, was premised on $60 a barrel. About 6 weeks ago, oil fell to about $30 a barrel. So you understand that almost halved Trinidad and Tobago's revenue. So we were facing an additional $3.5 billion deficit. And then more recently, because of a price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia, the price of a barrel of oil went further to $20 a barrel. So Trinidad and Tobago is facing more than simply COVID. We're facing a number of crises. And I just want to interject here that we in the Caribbean also have to keep our eye on the hurricane season. We start
You just took the words from my mouth.
June. Yes. We start a hurricane season the 1st of June. So while we are, and I'm going to come back to talk a bit more about where we're getting the funding from, while we are preoccupied with the rest of the world, and we're absolutely correct with this preoccupied with COVID-19, we have to understand our own circumstances. The rest of the world doesn't necessarily have to face the hurricane season. We also have to face a hurricane season. So we have to behave, economically speaking, and economically, not just in terms of our governments, but we as Caribbean citizens have to behave as if we are facing multiple crises, and we have to act as if we are facing multiple crises, because we are facing multiple crises. And we have to change our behaviors, both in terms of our governments, but also we as individuals, to mitigate against those pending crises. So COVID-19 is in front of us. It is global. It is in front of our faces. I mean, you can't wake up in the morning without the first thing off of everybody's lips is COVID, social distancing, wash your hands, sanitize, all of these things. But in a couple of weeks' time, we're also facing the start of a hurricane season. But in terms of getting back to the question about where the funding is coming from, our governments have resources available to them in terms of, as I said, grants and loans. So many of the listening audience would have heard about the debt service and the debt situation many of our governments face. But in the time of crisis that we're facing, we probably are going to have to incur even more debt, because we have to treat with our health sector that is going to take a significant hit, and that is already taking a significant hit. It is, I mean, people would hear conversations about respirators and all of the like, and masks and the gowns and the hazmat suits and all of these things that we have to put in place. These things cost money. Some of the materials that are required for our health sectors to treat with COVID-19, some of those materials are in fact being donated, the generosity of some of our global partners, but some of it still requires us to invest, to expend above and beyond what probably would have been allocated for the health sectors, because I think many of us have had our budgets read either within the last quarter of 2019 or certainly early in 2020, and whatever would have been allocated for our health sectors then probably is woefully inadequate to treat with the threat that is in front of us. But I want us to bear that in mind in terms of our circumstances, but also bear in mind that even as COVID-19 is in front of us as perhaps the most frontal issue in our line of sight, our circumstance in the Caribbean is very different. Our circumstance is very different because we have something called a hurricane season. And many of our islands, Grenada included, would have unfortunately had to treat with the ravages of a hurricane. Hurricane Ivan in 2004, Hurricane Gilbert in 1988 in Jamaica, and then of course all of the other instances last year with the Bahamas. So we know that our challenges are manifold, and our approach really needs to recognize that and to be a concerted collective effort as we move forward.
All right, Marlene, I've just been advised that Bishop Harvey is also having some difficulty. Apparently, he never received the link that we sent to him. So we're going to send him another link right now. I see a note here from somebody on Facebook saying the bishop is trying to reach you. He did not receive the link. So let's take another little break here. I hate to keep starting and stopping, but we'll get it. And let me send another link to Bishop Harvey. Okay?
Yeah.
Conveniently located in the Grand Shopping Center, for over 40 years, Food Fair has provided quality service at affordable prices. Now, grocery shopping is made easier and more convenient from the Food Fair web store.
Hey, babe. Listen, I need you to go down to Food Fair to get some groceries.
Alright, no problem. Right away.
Thanks, babe. What are you doing? You're supposed to be going Food Fair to get a grocery, man.
I am, but didn't you know you can order your groceries online from the Food Fair web store?
Are you serious?
Of course. All you have to do is just to log on to www.foodfair.gd with credit card in hand, and with an order of $100 or more, Food Fair Granance will deliver up to 3 miles away. And you don't even have to worry about your information, you know. Their safety measures are excellent.
So hold on. You just order online and Food Fair will deliver to you?
Yep.
Oh, baby, better hurry up and order, man.
I already did. They should be here any minute now.
Enjoy easy online shopping anytime from your home or office from the Food Fair web store. Food Fair, where you can fill your baskets without emptying your pockets.
Together with you, our customers, we energize our community.
Together with you, we energize our economy.
We are working together to give our nation a better tomorrow.
With you, we energize our future. Together, we energize our nation.
Thank you for partnering with us as we energize our spice island.
GRENLEC, energizing our Grenada.
Together with you, our customers, we energize our community.
Together with you, we energize our economy.
We are working together to give our nation a better tomorrow.
With you, we energize our future. Together, we energize our nation.
Thank you for partnering with us as we energize our spice island.
GRENLEC, energizing our Grenada.
Alrighty, folks, we are back with Dr. Marlene ANSE as we still await Bishop Clyde Harvey and Professor Wayne Ganpat. Marlene, I'd like you to pick up just where you left off. You know, the governments of the region are going to be faced with a major challenge as they settle down to rebuilding our economy. The economies in the region have been mismanaged by and large. At least that seems to be a general consensus of the public. There are people who have a lot of complaints about the way our governments have managed our economies. And one area, for example, is one I hope to be talking about this morning with Wayne when he gets on here. The fact that we have apparently placed all our eggs in one basket. Tourism is the backbone of our economy. Do you foresee a change coming about now and maybe a little bit more attention being paid to agriculture?
I mean, you're correct. Wayne is going to speak more eloquently than I can on that. But in terms of the eggs in one basket, that is not a secret. It's tourism for many of the islands. In Trinidad and Tobago, it's oil and gas, with literally some smattering of tourism, either in the form of carnival or tourism on the island of Tobago, the smaller of the two islands. But what we've done is that we've essentially managed our economies as monocrop economies, meaning that we're focused on one activity. And the result is that now that one major sector is being challenged, as I said, the challenge now is COVID-19. The challenge in other years has been other disasters, storms, hurricanes, etc. In the case of Trinidad and Tobago, the disaster has been the exogenous nature of the prices of oil and gas. We don't control the price of either oil or gas. So whenever there's a shock in the international world, Trinidad and Tobago suffers in terms of plummeting oil and gas prices. And I I understand why that short-sightedness could be interpreted as mismanagement, because for many of the islands, certainly in Trinidad and Tobago, the issue of diversification of our economy, essentially spreading the risk, has been a conversation for Trinidad and Tobago. I would say 40, 50 years now. We've been saying that really we can't put all of our eggs in the oil and gas basket. And a similar conversation would have applied to the other islands. So not only tourism, let's look at agriculture, or not only manufacturing, let's look at something else. And we've not really been true to that. So in that sense, I can understand the conclusion or the statement that our governments have mismanaged our macroeconomic policy and the economic trajectory. I think the other culprit that has seeped into the minds of our policymakers is the notion is that God is a Grenadian or God is a Trinidadian, because every time we have these crises, we always rebound. So by the time Russia and Saudi Arabia, by the time they kiss and make up and the price of oil rebounds, we might forget about the financial crisis that came out of the plummeting oil and gas prices. So there is a myopia, and the word I would prefer to use is a myopia as opposed to a mismanagement. And because we also, let's face it, our governments think in 5-year life cycles. So you pray earnestly, you clasp your hands and you ask God to let you ride through the 5 years that you're in power, and hopefully this too shall pass. And very often, some of our governments manage to ride through their 5-year terms in office without anything too detrimental happening to their economic circumstances. So I would think it's a myopia that plagues us and that has plagued us for decades. So this is not attributed to any particular sitting government. It is a malaise that has plagued us for several decades. And we always hope that we will see a change in terms of how we manage our economies. And somebody who's sitting in an opposition seat always promises to do things differently if and when they're given the opportunity to govern. And lo and behold, they come in and the cycle continues.
Yep.
We focus on one economic activity.
Yep.
We neglect the vulnerable in our society. Then there is some exogenous shock. We go to multilateral agencies. We ask for funding. If they don't give us funding, we lament about that. So even now, as we're facing COVID-19, we've forgotten a conversation about climate change, which again is something, it is a slow onset disaster waiting to happen to our economies. I mean, we've already been experiencing rising temperatures, sea level rises. My research back in 2004, 2005, I remember doing some research looking at the impact of hurricanes on our tourism sector. And this was even before climate change was as topical and as trendy as it is now. And looking at how close we built our hotel plants to the high water mark and looking at the impact of high tide on our economies, on our hotel sectors, etc. So it's a malaise and it's a myopia. I think that we are all in different ways culpable for reinforcing that. So as I said, I would shy away from the word mismanagement, really to say that it's a myopia and a malaise that really, I think we, the people, are in some senses just as complicit, because we do not insist that our leaders make the hard decisions when they are in power to ensure that we have more sustainable trajectories for our economies.
Marlene, you have just been saved by my Archbishop. I was just about to put you on the spot. And say to you, look, you have all the prime ministers of CARICOM listening to you right now. I want you to sit these guys down and say, hey, listen, as you restructure our economy post-coronavirus, these are the steps you are being mandated to take. However, You got away, Marlene, for the time being anyway. Because as you're about to see, we have now been joined by this gentleman who has kindly consented to spend a part of his Sunday morning with us. I'm referring to Bishop Clyde Harvey. Good morning, Bishop, and how are you?
Good morning, George. You just made me realize that computers are all about common sense. They're not about technological capacity, because I have no technological capacity, and I wasn't able to get into you with that link and so on. And I just said to myself, there has to be some way with just plain common sense that you can do this. So here I am.
The Lord's on your side, Bish.
Good morning to you. Good morning to Marlene. I'm not seeing Wayne. Where is he?
Wayne is having some challenges getting on this morning. I just saw a WhatsApp from him. Yesterday we had some problems, but he eventually got on. So I'm hoping that the same will prevail today. But just a moment ago, he said he was having some trouble getting on. Now, you know this lady who is off to your left there, Marlene Atz?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I am aware of her in different ways.
Yeah.
Marlene is a good friend and someone whom I admire a lot.
You know, Bishop, we've been talking about economics in your absence, and at the top of the program this morning, I explained that there are three areas I'd really like us to focus on this morning: the economics, the importance of bringing agriculture to the forefront, and the area where I expect that you will come in, Bishop, spirituality. And I don't know how, you might describe it differently than I do, and that's fine. But, Bishop, I would like you to speak to the Grenadian people this morning and people elsewhere about the importance of recognizing that there's something more than economics. There's something more than health. There's something more than tourism. There's a lot more to life than meets the eye. What would you say to your parishioners this morning who are just worried stiff about the direction in which this world apparently seems to be heading recently?
Well, you know, for me, first of all, let me just make this point. You say economics and then you turn to spirituality, and because you turn to spirituality, you turn to me. And I'm always amused by that people continue to create a dichotomous reality, when in fact, when you're talking, at least Christian spirituality, you're talking about the sense that the Spirit of God pervades everything. So that a good economist ought to be somebody who has a deep spirituality as well. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is that when you are committed to truth and you enter into any discipline, any intellectual discipline, any artistic discipline, that you eventually come up against the reality of your own spirit. And therefore, I mean, I was listening to Marlene just now, and I know her to be an economist, yes, one of the best, people say. I can't judge that myself, but from what I've known of her, I admire her work. But what I also know is that Marlene is somebody who is constantly dealing with her own spirit which she brings to her work. So that's the first thing I want to say, that in the midst of any situation that calls you to stretch yourself, right? In any such situation, you encounter a spirituality, which ultimately is your spirituality. And whether your spirituality links with Christian spirituality or Buddhist spirituality or Hindu spirituality, or even, and I dare to say this, agnostic spirituality, it is still a sense that within me there is a more than. And some of us identify that more than as God, as Yahweh, as Allah, as Brahman, whatever you identify it as. Christians identify it with Jesus Christ and the message of this God-man that moves us forward. So laying that as a kind of foundation, I think what we have to understand is that human history is human history, and we are caught up in human history. And if we look at human history honestly, rather than with the blinkers that many of us have, we have to recognize that there's a tide, to use the poet's word, in the affairs of men. And therefore we are caught up now in one of those waves. We are caught up in one of those waves, which we, and I look at your title, the Corona Comeback, we are presuming that this tide is going to reach a crest. People talk about this a curve, you know, and that it will then give us an opportunity to do something or to look towards something. That may be true, and I look to the scriptures and I see, particularly in the book of Ezekiel, the image of God moving his people forward and resettling them in their own soil. And that is one that I'm carrying with me now. That one of the challenges of recent Caribbean history, after the glorious days of the 60s and 70s, and I would say even into the 80s, when we had this tremendous creative spirit, our poets, our artists, our Calypsonians were flourishing. After those days, we ended up in a period where I myself was asking, where is the Caribbean literature? Where is the literature that can help us define ourselves? And I wasn't seeing much of that at all. Today, we're at a point where I think after having been sucked in, so to speak, by the very media on which we're depending today, becoming victims of the media of the North, of the Euro-American syndrome, after being sucked in by that, where our values were being determined by that, today, in a weird way, all of that is knocked on its back. And we are being asked today to ask ourselves, you know, what's going on? Well, before I get to your comeback, I have to ask myself, what's going on? What is really happening here? I'm happy that you're talking about charting the way forward, because I think that is the real challenge that we're going to face. Current leadership, you talked to Marlene just now about telling them, current leadership is caught up in the day-to-day business. And the other day when I was listening, yesterday, when I was listening to the IMF managing director talking about all this money that is going to be made available, I said to myself, my God, I wonder whether she realizes what she's doing to some leaders. Because all they're going to see in this is, where do I get the money?
Yeah, yeah.
You know? Whereas,
Correct. Yep.
The deeper question is, what is really happening to my people? And if, as I hope some of them believe, that the last few years have not been the best of years, as we have seen with this crisis, all of a sudden, across the Caribbean, nothing exists. You know, I mean, and I can say that because I look out on the Carenage and the harbor of St. George's there, where before you would be bustling on a Monday or a Wednesday in these tourist season days. There's nothing, you know, and therefore we have to understand that what we have chased in a crisis produces nothing. And therefore, the challenge is, how do we look again at who we are and where we're going? I have nothing against tourism insofar as it provides employment and so on. But I do have something against it when it is the only way in which our people subsist. And therefore, what I heard being said there just now, agriculture, critical. Food security, a must. But how do we plan for that? And how do we make sure, you know, one of the things that I said as my word to people before we went on lockdown is, go throw some seeds in your backyard. Throw some seeds in your backyard. Watch them grow. And remind yourself that in a moment of crisis, that is the only thing you can depend on, really. You know, even with technology, a number of Caribbean societies have said, we want to be able to focus on, well, Marlene would know the technical words for this, being an information society, you know, where we teach our young people computers and then they are able to service the information world out there. Even that can't take you anywhere if the people who are supposed to do that work are at home without food to eat. So there are some things that we have to have a priority on. And you know what I thought yesterday? And I hope I'm not saying something that gets me into serious trouble with economists and so on. You know, as I listened to the IMF chairman yesterday, I said to myself, I hope that when Caribbean governments go with their begging bowls to the IMF, that she has the guts to say to them, unless you all come to me together, don't come at all. Wow, you know, I think that's what I was saying. You know, unless you come to me together, don't come at all. You're too small as individual societies for me to deal with you. Wow. And I think with Mia Motley leading us, with our own Prime Minister here who has his own skills in this regard, with the other leaders, we can forge something out of this. We can. Although I don't like the word forge, you know, it's in Trinidad's national anthem, but every time I sing it, I say, God, I'm not forging anything. Anyway, George, I've been running my mouth a little bit too much back.
No, but hold on, you're being very profound. Let me hear what Marlene has to say about what you were just saying.
I mean, as most times when Bishop Harvey speaks, I have to smile because he brings a breath of fresh, and I'm not saying this simply because he is the bishop or because he's on the screen in front of me, but as he indicated, we go back a long way, and I always appreciate the breath of fresh air and the honesty, sometimes brutally so, but the honesty. There is one of the things that I've observed with our Caribbean governments over the years, particularly in the aftermath of so-called natural disasters, our hurricanes and storms, those disasters to which we've grown accustomed, is that there is a mendicance. We go with cap in hand, and we want the entire world to support our rebuilding vulnerabilities. We don't rebuild resilience, we rebuild vulnerabilities, and it always stands out in my mind. In 2010, when Haiti experienced their earthquake, the world was shattered that this already vulnerable country had experienced this natural hazard. And then lo and behold, days after, Haiti was still reeling from the impacts of the earthquake, the geopolitical direction changed to the tsunami, so that the aid that was intended to go towards Haiti was redirected. And I always thought that was an important turning point. No pun intended. That should have been an important turning point for us in terms of how we treat with the impacts of natural hazards and disasters. And COVID-19 is no different. We are looking towards the global, all of the multilaterals to provide us with the wherewithal, financial wherewithal, to rebuild our economies, but we probably are not going to use whatever funding is available to help us rebuild stronger and more resilient economies. And when I say stronger and more resilient, embedded in that is the whole context of the diversification, but also reducing the number of people in our economies who are vulnerable. And I mean, we can have a conversation around vulnerability for the rest of today and all of next week, because we're talking about our education systems. How do we educate people? I have been struck in this season that our education system, I wonder the extent to which our education system has been educating our population to treat with circumstances like this. And I'm not talking about accessing social media. I am talking about the fact that parents now have to homeschool their children. And every time I think about the number of young people who probably are not going to be homeschooled because their parents either don't have the interest or the capacity to treat with it, or the technology, because everybody is presuming that you have access to internet, or you have access to a smartphone, or you have access to a computer. I think about what is going to be the trajectory for our societies, and this is the collective societies here, not simply Trinidad and Tobago, 5 or 10 years down the line, because COVID-19 is what is in front of us, I keep saying. We have other natural disasters. We're going into the hurricane season. We have other things, other exogenous shocks that we probably are not seeing on the horizon anytime soon that can also impact on us. And I wonder whether or not we are going to learn the lessons from this experience, or these series of experiences, to help us do things differently, because I think it is absolutely unsustainable for us to continue to have a singular focus. So the focus cannot be on COVID-19 alone. It has to be on COVID-19 and all of the other crises that are circling, as it were, like sharks in the water, but also how do we rebuild our societies to minimize the vulnerability. So the economics is important. I'll be the first person to say that the economics is important, but the economics on its own cannot provide us with the solutions that we require or that are necessary to help us ensure that our economies can be sustainable in the medium to long term.
Marlene, let me take you up on that, because you say the economics not sufficient. And I want to underline that, not because I have another interest, but because I think we have to begin to identify what makes for sufficiency, what makes for the fulfillment of our real needs. And I've always felt that one of the things that is very, very important is our culture, our cultural expressions, you know, arts and culture. And one of the things that has saddened me, now, some people think I'm a great extempo fellow, but as soon as this thing happened, people began to say to me, Bishop, when you bring in an extempo? You know? And I was seriously considering it, but the Lord shut me down. But what I'm very, very concerned about is, very quickly, the Calypsonians got onto the scene to do an extempo. And I was getting a flood of extempo stuff via WhatsApp. But what was interesting was that it was a repetition and a repetition and a repetition and a repetition. Same old, and I make no apologies for saying it, crap. You know, and our Calypsonians have to understand that there is a responsibility to the society to go beyond just repeating the same things just because you have a chance to do it. This is a time for our Calypsonians and also for our authors, our poets. I've seen one or two good poems, our poets, to really sit, think, ponder, experience what you're really experiencing in all of this, you know? And then out of that richness, after Corona, the question is, can we dream a dream? This is where I look forward to a rudder. You know, I don't know, David hasn't been taking up some of that recently, but I sent a message to him telling him, David, we need your voice. We need your voice. And I'm not okra enough with the Grenada and Calypso theme to know who from Grenada could provide that. But we have not been able to get from our artists the kind of visionary depth that we need at this time, and we have to challenge them to do that. You know, our what do you call them, graphic artists, the people who do advertisements and so on, they have a role to play here. They have a role to play here. Let me give you an example of what I mean. The government of Grenada was challenged early on when they instituted a partial state of emergency. They were challenged because a lot of people were not taking it on, especially the young men on the block. And what hit me after a while, especially not yesterday, but the Saturday before, when I went on a little spin around the island, what struck me was that the young men whom I met, some of them didn't even know it had a partial state of emergency. Why? Because they're not on social media. Why? You know, they are, some of them can't even read and write, you know, and therefore there was a need, and I think there still is a need, to get other people to provide images. One of the things that is in the Caribbean imagination still to this day, thanks to Pat Bishop, was when she needed to push a sanitation drive. Charlie, you remember that?
Yeah, Charlie.
And Charlie became an image for people not only in Trinidad but across the region. Now we need some things like that to take us beyond Corona, you know, and therefore this is a tremendous challenge to our Calypsonians, first of all, that next year's Calypso season, or I don't know what will happen to Grenada for this year, but certainly for the next Calypso seasons, whenever they come up, Corona must be a topic, not in terms of simply saying, we went through this and we went through that and we catching hell and blah, 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 you know. There must be some perception of where we might go after this, because our politicians, well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they don't seem to have the capacity to vision, you know, and this is not their fault. The other day it struck me that when you look at the journey that we've made, you've had the politicians, yes, but you've had the people like a Lloyd Best, a Pat Emanuel, you know, people like that, men and women Merle Hodge, who were able to articulate, right, where we might go, and out of that articulation, give the public servants something to work with. And that is what we need now.
But Bishop, I want to take you up on the point of education, and I agree with all that you said. And I think, to my mind, and given where I sit, professionally, my occupational hazard, as it was, as someone who is steeped in the education sector, I think therein lies the challenge. Our education system has over the years become so focused on repetition and educating people to pass exams, as opposed to educating people to be introspective and to internalize and to use education as a vehicle to allow us to engage in development, whether that development takes the form of art and culture, the spoken word in terms of the art form, calypso, kaiso, everything. So even with the calypsos, and you know that I enjoy carnival to the full extent. The art form, and I use the term art form very loosely, has become devoid of any imagination. So whereas long ago I was, as you know, Wayne and I collaborate a lot, and I was telling him the other day, we were chatting, and I was reminded about Relata's song. I forget the title of it, but the punchline that said, "A lime long time was old talk and fun, but now a lime is 25 cents for one." Where Relata was talking about food security, and I think this could be back, sorry?
It was buy local.
Buy local. But Relata was treating with an economic issue, a food security issue, a livelihood issue, a food and nutrition issue, but he cleverly wove all of those into a cultural art form, the calypso. But I don't think our education system allows for that. I look, for example, as the Human Development Index, which is an index coming out of the United Nations that looks at three main areas: healthcare, education, and of course, income. And in the education dimension, I always argue that so many of the countries in the Caribbean are between medium to high human development based on their definition. But the indicator they use for education is really access to education as opposed to literacy. So if you have, and for many of the Caribbean countries, that is close to 100%. So it means that because our systems allow for people, say that, from age, you have early childhood, you go into primary, secondary, and some of us go on to tertiary education. But that is not the indicator. The indicator has to be, and you're talking about the young men in the community, and I'm imagining when you say young men, because I see it happening in Trinidad and Tobago, 16 and 17 and 18 and 15-year-olds who are functionally illiterate. So for them, the education system has failed, and now that we need to have a rethinking and a re-engineering and a new approach to how we rebuild after Corona, you really need those creative minds to come on board. But if the education system was not one that was not an enabling environment to allow people to think creatively and to act creatively, to be able to respond in times like a crisis, it means that we probably are going to find ourselves hard-pressed. And next year, the bountiful kind of calypsos and thought-provoking social commentaries that you're looking forward to, or that you're hoping will happen, may not be forthcoming. You're calling on David Rudder. I mean, one of the things that stands out in my mind is David Rudder, 1986, where he just, it was a smorgasbord. You could have any one of David's tunes from back in those days is still relevant now. Yeah. And we've not replaced David. There's been no replacement for a David Rudder.
Well, you were talking about young people, and it's true that the calypsos of many of our young calypsonians are not written by themselves. But if you follow what comes out of the school competitions, there is some substantial material there. The adult competitions are all about the money, but the school competitions are about the art form still. And I think we have an opportunity to really move there and work there to the benefit of the region.
Can I just jump in here for a minute? First of all, I just want to share a couple of quick comments on social media. Bishop, there's somebody named Adele Zyra in Trinidad who heard you a little while ago talking about a unified region. And she wants you to know that that's an excellent point, Bishop. Then there's somebody...
I hate making excellent points that won't happen. Bring me in up there, and, how do we make it happen?
Somebody named Trini62 says, excellent reminder of what happened to Haiti. One can argue that, to some extent, a similar situation exists today with COVID-19 because of the worldwide nature of this current crisis. Okay? Marlene, there's something I wanted to come at you with. You've been talking about education quite a bit this morning. You know, Marlene, for anything that we do henceforth to be successful, we're going to need, more than anything, the buy-in of the public. Governments can only do so much. But there is a challenge, and that is convincing the public to become involved and play their part. There's a great deal of cynicism right now, and it's not just in Grenada, but throughout the region, maybe throughout the world. People just do not trust their governments anymore. Therefore, while governments, some of them may be very well-intentioned, trying to do the best for their people, but the public buy-in is not there, Marlene, and it is going to be needed to move forward. We want you, please, explain to me how we should go about getting that public buy-in. Because we're the people who are going to make it happen.
Well, there are two things. I don't think they're equally important, but I could understand where the suspicion comes from. I mean, this is from years of abuse, quote unquote, where, again, we the people, we put our confidence in governments, perhaps misplaced and for the wrong reasons. And our governments have disappointed us, and I'm saying this collectively. It's not targeted at any particular government or any particular country. So I think that suspicion is something that is tried and proven, and it is going to be difficult to divorce that, to essentially unravel that suspicion at this point in time. But having said that, I think we as individuals, as citizens of the Caribbean, as citizens of the world, have a responsibility to educate ourselves. And I'm saying, every time I use the term education, I want to be clear. It's not about certification. It is about understanding what we want for ourselves and understanding what might be some of the ways in which that can be achieved. And when I say what we want for ourselves, not selfishly, but what do we want our countries to look like? What do we want our region to look like? We keep thinking that these things are the domain of the governments, and maybe that is why governments have, in fact, when they have the quote-unquote power, they go in and they do whatever they want because they realize that we, the people, do not hold them accountable. And the education that I'm suggesting that becomes more and more entrenched and inculcated in our society is one which will then allow us to hold our governments accountable. So Bishop made mention some time ago about, you know, the IMF managing director and the fact that he's saying that these funds are available. And I can see our politicians rubbing their hands gleefully because they will access funds. Yes, we are vulnerable. We'll make all of the cases why we should access the funding. And then what? The politicians are then going to do what they think is appropriate with the funding, as opposed to ensuring that the people who need the funding, where the vulnerabilities exist, the funding goes there. So in moving forward, I think, yes, some work needs to be done in terms of reducing that level of distrust that we have of our politicians. But I'm saying that is going to be a longer term project, so to speak, because we have grown accustomed and we've allowed our politicians, by and large, to do what they want when they assume office. And we wait 5 years and we either vote them out or we continue to vote them in. But we always vote, I think, for the wrong reasons. As opposed to wanting a governance structure that allows for transparency and that allows for accountability. And I'm saying that if we want to change a trajectory, if we want to change things, if we want to use Corona as the turning point for us, and an inextricable part of that turning point has to be in terms of our governance arrangements. And the governance arrangements are not simply some kind of catch-all phrase. It requires us to take responsibility as individuals to educate ourselves, but educate ourselves into understanding what do we want our economies to look like, and what will be the most appropriate governance systems and governance structures to allow us to begin that process of creating the kinds of economies that we want for ourselves and for future generations. But it simply cannot be that because in Trinidad and Tobago, for example, we have an election that is due this year. I don't know what the timeline is. I think Jamaica might be on the same timeline as Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know what the timeline is for some of the other countries. But we have to use this as an opportunity to create that change, to be the change that we want to be, as it were, and that we want to see in our particular economies. But it is going to be a complicated thing because we're dealing with the crises, we're dealing with everyday living, and we're dealing with essentially turning the ships around in our respective territories onto a more sustainable path that will redound to our benefit. So it's going to be a complicated thing, but I think it is important for us as individuals to contemplate what we want to see the Caribbean looking like in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, and to be the agents of change in that process.
Wow, Marlene, you just said a lot. Let me put one thing on the table. And bomber dreaming. We have in most of our territories now a lockdown. In most of our territories, we have people at home every evening. Is it possible, even if you have an election around the corner, and in Grenada is not around the corner, it's about 3 blocks down the road, is it possible for us to think of those evenings? Okay, you have the entertainment and so on and so on, but using those evenings imaginatively, where, for example, you invite people to talk about different aspects of their life together, where the opposing groups in the society can talk about the way forward. I was very happy when the leaders of the two parties in Grenada met, and I said, wow, we're taking a step. But that was a private meeting. Nobody knows what went on at that meeting. Mm-hmm. And already people are saying, oh, this and that and the other. And I've received good reports of those meetings, of that meeting. But other people have another viewpoint. Now, could we use 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock every evening where we have a national discussion about what's going on, a national discussion about different areas of our national life, a national discussion about after Corona what, and get some people to really, not just the political leadership, everybody. And I think we can have a fantastic, and as I dreamt of that just now, I remembered what happened with the first budget preparation in the PRG when they were in power, when my sense of what happened was that all across Grenada, people were talking budget, people who never looked at a budget before in any seriousness. The thing was so put to people that they could talk about it out of their own experience of life. In other words, what I'm talking about here, in a certain sense, is the dreaming of a different democracy beyond Corona, of a different understanding of what democracy is. In a certain sense, and this may frighten some people, a rejection of the Westminster adversarial model. We're too small for that.
All right. Bishop and Marlene, time out. I want you to just give me a couple of secs here. First of all, in preparation for this morning's program, I wrote a bit of an introduction for each of you. I've already read Marlene's, and I don't think it's too late to read the little introduction that I had written here about Bishop Fred Harvey. Let me share that with you. Bishop Harvey is the fifth bishop of the Diocese of St. George and sees his role as a bishop as being to teach, sanctify, and govern. He was born in Port of Spain, Trinidad, and was ordained a priest by Archbishop Anthony Panton on June 27, 1976. The priest for the service of the Archdiocese of Port of Spain. He's well known as a caring and outspoken priest and shepherd who gets deeply involved in the communities he serves. His comments and responses to social issues are often invited by the media. And to be honest with you, that's probably one of the reasons why I extended this invitation to Bishop Harvey. You know, I've probably met this man only 3 or 4 times in the past. But I'll tell you one thing. Whenever we have met, including this morning, he always has my undivided attention. I listen to this guy when he speaks, and please don't mind me calling you Guy, Bishop, because I really, even though I don't know you very well, I do consider you a friend. You're a friend of this country, and therefore, by extension, a friend of George Gray. I want to play a video, very short video, it's only about 2 minutes long, which I guess it's fair to say this thing has gone viral. A number of people have sent this to me over the past few days. And you're about to hear Bishop Harvey in his own words. And as you do, you'll probably understand why I feel the way that I do about this gentleman. Check this out.
What's happening in your home? What's happening when you have this enforced presence to people whom you haven't been present to for a long time? What happens with you and your spouse, a significant other person in your life? What happens with you and your children as you have to put up with them 24/7 rather than sending them off to school? These are moments not to get angry. These are moments to sit, chat, talk with them. Talk with them about life. Talk with them about love. It's a moment, for instance, with your significant other to go deeper than the superficialities that so often crown our own existence morning, noon, and night. It's a time to get to know each other better. That's the challenge of COVID-19. Other people are doing all kinds of things and you think you're getting to know them better. You're judging the government, you're judging the health services and so on. Hey, don't only look at them. Look at yourself. Look at yourself. You don't necessarily will judge yourself, but you can at least in looking at yourself, discern what is happening and dare to be grateful to God for who you are. Be grateful to God for the strength that you're showing in the midst of this. Be grateful to your partner for the concern that your partner may be showing for you and for others. Let gratitude rise in your heart when you see your neighbor, and even if you keep 6 feet from your neighbor, you still can have a conversation, an encounter. Look for the ways in which wonderful things will happen through all of this, and rejoice in them.
Well, I hope that now you understand why I feel the way I do. Folks, we're going to continue, but I'll tell you, I've got some more good news for you right now, because I know that he's been trying for, probably a couple of hours, but take a look, 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 take a look.
Can Pat, how you doing, boy? Everything else changed about you but your face.
I guess it's fair to say you guys know each other.
Yes. How's the wife? How's the wife? Tell us how the wife is.
Wayne, we're not hearing you. We're seeing you, Wayne, but we're not hearing you.
Yes, I am well. I am well. Are you hearing me now?
Yes, we are now.
Yes.
So I am well. Family is well. I am happy to be here this morning after trying for the last hour and a half. But I've been monitoring it on my phone occasionally. So I've been hearing some of the conversations. Very interesting. But I guess I am last here now. But Bishop, the scripture, the good wine always comes last,
And you might get some vinegar in between.
Right.
Let's taste the good wine, please.
Correct. So I don't know, George, would you like me to respond to some question that you all have?
Absolutely. Listen, man, you have got as much time as you want. However, first, I would like to take a little break here, pay some bills, keep the very kind people who have kept us on the air happy. So we'll take a break and we'll come on back with you folks right after this.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate, Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Together with you, our customers, we energize our community.
Together with you, we energize our economy.
We are working together to give our nation a better tomorrow.
With you, we energize our future. Together, we energize our nation.
Thank you for partnering with us as we energize our spice island.
GRENLEC, energizing our Grenada.
Calling all vehicle owners, inspection and licensing continues, and at Hubbard's we want you to be ready. From February 16th to March 31st, registration numbers 2501 to 5000 with single registration letter, or registration numbers 251 to 500 with plural registration letters will receive 11% off new torque tires and POWERMAX batteries. Don't get caught unprepared. Visit us today at the Motor Department in Mount Gay or the TYRE Bay in Grand Anse near to the building supplies.
Well, I have no clue where Wayne has disappeared. Aha, there he is. Folks, just let me share the introduction that I had put together here on Dr. Ganpat. He began his career as an agricultural officer in the Ministry of Agriculture in Trinidad and Tobago more than 30 years ago. He joined the UE in 2010 as a lecturer in the Department of Agricultural Economics and Extension, and in 2015 was appointed as the head of that department. Dr. Ganpat took up his post as the Dean of the Faculty of Food and Agriculture at the St. Augustine campus of UE on August 1st, 2016, to begin his 4-year tenure. While reading through his biography, the following quote jumped out at me. We have to encourage agriculture students to think outside of the box, to invent the systems that make agriculture and food production an art, a joy, and a business. Wayne, you and I have a lot to talk about. And you've been listening to your two colleagues before you. Take it away, my friend.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning to fellow panelists and all the listeners and viewers. What can I say? I'd really like to keep the focus in this season that we are in now, on looking forward to good things. If we really focus on where we are as a region on with regards to our food security, we become rather depressed. So the real intention is to look forward, to acknowledge where we are and to look forward. I think this is the time, this is the week and the season that we need to look forward to something. Otherwise we'd really get very depressed and we would put our hands up in the air. But we should not have been in this place as a food secure region. We are not secure in the region, food and nutrition wise. And we should have been. I just heard somebody spoke about Haiti a while ago. Haiti had their terrible experiences, and Haiti is back right where it is in terms of food security. I think it's last year or year before, hurricane passed through the Bahamas, a couple of the other islands, Antigua, Barbuda, etc. Did we really use that as an opportunity to put plans and actions in place to get our countries on a better footing? Every year we have this natural disaster of hurricane that's going to sweep the islands, Grenada included. Trinidad is probably one day, you never know. Do we ever use this opportunity to sit down as a region and to plan to make ourselves more food secure? Our food secure in terms of those who lead us, it's only spoken in terms of months of import cover. And that can't be food secure. Months of import cover for food is something that should not be in our language. No, it shouldn't be. We should be saying we have months of food cover locally, regionally. and we have it either in country or across the region. So, Trinidad says, and the headlines say we have 6 months of import cover. I read that this morning. I read it again this morning. Dr. had sent it to me. And I read a little way down below that. And it says, actually, we have 2 months of import cover, 2 months of food on the way, coming on the seas, and 2 months to buy. So people only have 2 months of import cover. Now, that 2 months of import cover, and I want to say Trinidad is probably just like the rest of the region. Probably those islands that depend on tourism, Grenada, Barbados, St. Lucia, Antigua, all of these things, they probably have, they're looking at the import cover also. The 2 months of import cover that we have in country, I think nobody is saying how much of that has gone in all the mad rush of buying. We saw what happened in Barbados when they had to call a curfew because of the mad rush on supermarkets, etc. How much of that is left? How much of that 2 months is left? All right, so that's really the bad news, right? That's really the bad news. Now we shouldn't in this time be speaking about months of import cover. We should be speaking of, we have food coverage for the region for a time to come. Now, 6 months. Who knows when this thing will end? We hope, I think when our leaders say 6 months, they're really hoping and we don't see their fingers, but maybe it crossed, right? That 6 months this thing will normalize and we'll get back to where it is. But suppose it goes longer than that. What would they tell us after 6 months? What would they tell us after 2 months? Suppose the 2 months finished and the supply chains interrupted and people start to get desperate and countries start to not send food, not ship food right here in the region. Trinidad depends on root crops from St. Vincent, fruits and vegetables. A lot of things come from Grenada. Lots of lovely fruits and vegetables. Fruits mainly come from Grenada and some root crops. What about if governments decide, look, they watch how much they have in country, and then they decide, look, there's a line here. I'm not going to send anymore. I really love Trinidad and I love the other countries, but I'm really not going to send anymore. Bishop Clive Harvey might be happy because he would have food, but what would happen to the rest of us down here? You understand? So that is, all those conversations are not healthy conversations at this time. So we really need to take this opportunity to reflect and to think about how we're going to become a food secure region. And in a little while, I will pause a little bit because I want to talk about something I heard the panelists talking about a little while ago about regional food security across the region and a unified region for food security. I have some thoughts on that, but I'll pause for a while.
Bishop and Marlene, you guys want to chime in on Wayne?
There's one factor in the whole issue which I think people are not really allowing themselves to think about much. Like the other day, when they were talking about the rush to buy things, a radio commentator was saying, yeah, but people have to realize, because we're on a curfew in Grenada, and therefore people were allowed out 2 days last week to buy. And one commentator was saying, yeah, but they have to understand that if they have a curfew, they can't buy for 1 day alone. And she's talking to people, you must budget and you must buy for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But what we're not seeing is that in Grenada particularly, I don't know about the other islands, jobs, things are closed down. All our daily paid workers have no income. And I suspect a lot of our monthly paid workers do not sure whether they have a job at the end of the month. So the money shortages that are there are making it almost impossible for some people to survive beyond a week. They have no money to buy anything. And this is something which I think we're not taking seriously enough. When we talk stimulus, we're talking about stimulus, giving companies money and so on, saying, but how do you allow for those people who have lost their jobs, who have been living from week to week or month or day to day, and now have nothing? So it's one thing to talk about food supply, it's another thing about money supply and access to money to do what you have to do.
Wayne?
Entry point. I think that's almost a perfect entry point for the comment that I wanted to make on Prof. Ganpat's contribution. The economic stimulus packages, certainly in Trinidad and Tobago, and what we've seen in the rest of the world, and it ties into Wayne's point about food security. A lot of what we consume is imported. So if there is a disruption to the supply chain, if the government, whichever government, does not have the wherewithal to pay for what is being imported, if the companies that are importing do not have the wherewithal to pay for what is being imported, that interrupts whatever is being imported. So that's the first point. Even if you're getting cash in hand, and Bishop made the point about persons becoming unemployed, we know in some of the islands, governments are in fact making cash contributions to vulnerable segments of the population, unemployment relief, etc. But the cash is to buy what? If the food supply chain is interrupted, if there is not sufficient incentive for local farmers, and I know Wayne will tap into that aspect of the food security conversation, if there is not sufficient locally grown food, the money that you have can't buy anything, actually. So it is I keep saying that the economics is important, but the economics has to be located in the larger context. And I think that there is a natural sort of interconnectedness between the food security conversation and the economic and financial conversation in terms of, using one as a kind of fillip to support the other. Because if you don't have sufficient food, then the money that you have really amounts to naught, because either prices will go up or they will simply not be available. So the food security conversation, I think, really has to be located in the context of, or the economic conversation has to be an integral part of the food security conversation as well. I'm seeing something with the screens. I hope we've not lost. All right. Yeah.
So I want to say that food security, by the international definition of food security, has some keywords in it. It says all people must have access to safe and nutritious foods at all times. That's the International Food and Agricultural Organization definition. All people must have access to safe and nutritious food at all times. So if we use that definition, we're in real trouble in this situation right here. So the conversation that Dr. is carrying on there is extremely important. We don't know what people are buying. Even when they get money from government, we don't know what they're rushing into the grocery to buy. Are they sufficiently educated to know that Israeli staples we should be bulking up on rather than toilet paper or tin cans and tin? It really blew my mind to know what people is buying all this toilet paper for. You understand? It's really staples. And what are these staples? Do people really know what these staples are that we probably need to have in our homes? Is it rice, flour, dried peas, beans, some dried milk, this kind of thing, things that could last for some time? I'm not so sure people are sufficiently educated to know these are the things they need to buy, and not the tin stuff, the packet stuff that will generally raise our blood pressure and increase our diabetes. So that's another education about nutrition that we have to do for people. But coming back to food security, let me get to one of the points I want to say before time runs out, is that I think as a region, we have had many food security plans across the region. And many of these things are done by experts. And I think that even, and what I'm saying about the region is also about Trinidad. Many of the things are done by experts in the region. We don't need another plan. What I am saying all the time, we need actions on the ground. Many of these plans have good, valid, appropriate recommendations that we could implement countrywide and then region-wide. We need actions. We don't need another plan. We don't need another survey. And while I'm saying we don't need another survey, I don't know if Dr. Hart saw that yesterday on the newspaper, I'm just reporting that CARICOM initiated another survey among all the regions to find out what are the needs in this COVID time. Well, if that didn't irritate me, I mean, they are now canvassing people and institutions and all to find what are the needs in this COVID time. I guess it's the buy time to make another plan and hopefully that this thing will settle, normalize, so we could forget about it. I think we're not going region-wide. We're really not going to get it together. I don't know in what area we got it together region-wide, but I'm not so sure we're going to get it together for food and nutrition security. Now, saying that, it should happen, because I don't think that we need to, we want every country to try to produce all its food. It cannot happen. Trinidad cannot produce food crops as good as St. Vincent and Grenada. We cannot produce those lovely barbadines and soursop and five fingers and all these things that comes out of Grenada. We can't really produce those things as nice as they are. We could produce a lot of fresh fruits and a lot of fresh vegetables that we could make available. Rice, Guyana has a lot of rice, Suriname has a lot of rice, you know, all these kind, Belize, overloaded Belize is part of the CARICOM area, you know. Citrus, dried beans. We produce a lot of beans, dried beans. These are things that we need to have an action, the way we could access all these things within the region. Within the region, intra-regional. Because when we talk about food cover, it's food cover extra-regional. Right? It's from people outside the Caribbean who really, I don't know, and really will worry too much about us. Or Trinidad or Grenada, no. In one pen, they will strike us all the list. But intra-regionally, we have enough food to people. Jamaica does a lot of meat, you know. Trinidad does a lot of poultry, albeit that we import everything. But we have to get it together. This is an excellent opportunity for us to put actions on the ground, not go after another survey and another plan, but to really put things on the ground. Because soon from now, hurricane season is upon us. Yes. Soon from now. Less than 2 months from now, hurricane season upon us. And I want to remind folks that there is a looming crisis in the region that has to do with climate change. Climate change is on the back burner, but climate change is really going to seriously impact our food production. So we have to get it together. And then I'll pause again for comments.
Kind of scary, eh? You've got the virus, you've got climate change, and you got the hurricane season. Bishop, pray for us.
Wayne,
Pray for us.
Stop depressing, eh? I mean, too many people saying pray for us. And, well, I don't want to get into a discussion of that because that sometimes gets me a little bit angry because we're not understanding where prayer must come from. But Wayne, I want to pick you up on one thing here because I think you're pointing in the right direction. And when you say no more surveys, we have over these years have had hurricanes in this region. And therefore, when it comes to disasters and disaster preparedness, we know what is needed. We don't have to go and do another survey. I remember after Maria hit Dominica, and I was asking some questions, and I was told, listen, if Maria wiped out a whole season or whatever it was that was above ground, one way to deal with that is to plant below ground, so that when the hurricane comes, you have food in the ground. You don't have to worry about that. So that there are things we can do now, and we don't need another survey to do them. But what is striking me, and I don't know what I'm putting myself into when I say this, I feel very burdened as a bishop by what Marlene raised earlier on about the education system. Right now in Grenada, I have the most primary schools. And when I look at what I've inherited, both in terms of curriculum and in terms of teachers, I feel sad. Because in many ways, there are things that our teachers should be doing which we're not trained them to do. And therefore, the challenge of shifting the education system is something that I feel like a monkey on my back, right? So that's one thing. And then with agriculture, we've been talking, it's almost 3 years I'm here now, we've been talking about the conversion of church lands for other purposes, which would help the agricultural sector. So there are possibilities, but to get us to act, to get the people generally galvanized to act, that is a major problem. And I have to lay that back at the doorstep of church and state, because both church and state have to be able to get people seeing a future. You know, I mean, this past week in the liturgy of the church, it's all about dreaming a different dream. And can we do that? Can we push that? Can we get, as Marlene was suggesting, politicians to look beyond the next election? That for me is so critical. Hey, we will die if we don't do something like that.
Marlene?
Marlene?
No, Wayne, go ahead, because I know you came in late, so I think I want us to get a lot of the conversation around food security.
Right. So I want to say that Bishop was quite right that we know what we need to do. This whole thing of having food on the ground is so essential. We know the crops that are shallow rooted that get blown away. We need to change our cropping patterns. We need to put rainy season is coming. We need to do the things to keep lots of food on the ground. It needs a plan. A strategy. It's not a new food security plan. It needs planning. Like you put it on a Gantt chart and you put the planning. Huh?
It needs a will. It needs a will. It needs a commitment. It needs a coalition of people who are willing to drive this thing forward.
Correct. And get it correct. I want to say that land, everybody, when you talk about agriculture and land, and we're trying to get land and all this, very good. But I just want to put it out to the audience that things have changed dramatically. That when I was in university, one of the first key factor of production in agriculture was land. Labor, credit, and technology. Land is no longer a factor of production. There are techniques and technologies that you can produce as much as you want on small amounts of land. For a lot of the crops that we produce, most of the vegetables, the Chinese produce all their, the Chinese, not all, but a lot of their fruits in greenhouses, or at least shade houses or protected structures, right? And they utilize high intensity, much less space. Water for irrigation is a big problem across the region now. There are technologies to meet these things. I mean, University of West Indies, we know these things, right? And I mean, other places, we know these things, right? It's really how we really get some people to, to, like Marlene is saying, to the will to do it and to implement it, right? That in every country, we have a certain amount of crops in the ground, right? All the time. As we have in the ground. We maybe probably have storage. There is cold storage. We have some capacity of cold storage that is constantly being replenished. Seeds. In a time of disaster, where do we get seeds? All our seeds generally now come from the United States or probably Germany or probably China. What will happen? These places are on lockdown. Their supply chains are, interrupted. in a while, people are going to ask where we're going to get our seeds. Trinidad has access to fertilizers, but yet still we import a lot of fertilizers from probably Germany and some from the States. Where are these things going to come? A plant needs, we need good seeds and we need fertilizers for crops. But talking about the seeds, right? Those are foreign seeds, hybrid seeds of different varieties. What we really need to do, and I'm just mentioning it here, and that we have started to do, is to try to go back to our original types. Bishop, we used to have a yard-long body in Trinidad. You know that?
Yes, yes.
You don't see that again, right? The corn that we used to have long time. You don't see that again. Right. Now those things were well adapted to the pests and diseases and the conditions, right? Even the animals that we had, the sheep and goat that we rear down here, we quickly replace them with those that have a lot of wool type. And the wool the woolly type, they can't withstand the heat conditions that is increasingly happening to us. But we have good animals here lost somewhere in among farmers that we could go back to, and these are the things we have to go back to and bulk up and keep going to sustain our things, because these are the things that really the region needs. I'm not saying solely in addition to whatever it has, but when it comes a crisis, we could go back to these things. Just on the University of West Indies right now, we just launched on a major project. It's called SOS, Save Our Seeds. And we set up a lab, and we're going to be multiplying a lot of the local indigenous seeds that we have. We're going to be saving them, planting them out, bulking them up. So I think we had a little foresight in that initiative. So that was just a little 2 cents to add in, because I don't want to hug the time. We're almost to the end.
Who's next? Marlene?
Hi. No, my phone battery is dying, so I was just trying to salvage it. I agree with everything that Wayne and Bishop, what they've said, and the more I reflect on it, it is useful to have persons like us who have perspectives and who can share these perspectives. But I also would like us to contemplate an opportunity where we can have some of the engagements, disseminating information, prime time, so that our populations don't get all of their information from off the internet, some of which is flawed and some of the information of which is really not relevant to help our circumstances in terms of how we move forward beyond COVID-19. And I keep repeating that while COVID-19 is in front of us and it is a challenge that we're facing frontally, I think this is the first time that collectively in the region we've come together. Bishop talked about us with one voice accessing funding. This is possibly, as far as I can remember, the only time that the entire Caribbean region has had to come together to face an external threat in the way in which we've had to come together in our respective jurisdictions, but come together collectively to face a threat. And again, thinking through opportunities. Out of a muddy pond, 10,000 flowers possibly can bloom. Let us see how we can influence our specific spaces to get conversations going that will allow for a change in the mindset, that would allow for that kind of education to which we've been referring, for people to understand that, hey, this is not simply about COVID-19. This is about my life. This is about my livelihood. This is about how I will exist beyond COVID-19, COVID-20, COVID-2021, whatever the case might be. Because I fear that we are so caught up in the sensationalization around COVID-19 that we miss the opportunity. I was on a television program or a radio program, probably a television program in Trinidad a couple weeks ago when the plummeting of oil and gas prices started. And of course, I was invited to be part of that program to discuss the impact of the falling oil prices. And at that time, I remember saying that, yeah, that's one thing circling the wagon, but it's not the only thing. There was COVID-19. We had not started focusing on COVID-19 at that point in time. And I think there's an opportunity for us to use this set of circumstances to help begin that change. Use this as the turning point in terms of the education. Precisely what is happening this morning, George, for us to start to educate our regional publics so that we can then perhaps put greater pressure or influence, whichever word you want to use, our political directorate and our policymakers in terms of how we do not rebuild this vulnerability. I mean, we've all been saying the same things. Hurricane come, hurricane go, we rebuild our vulnerabilities. We go back to same old, business as usual.
You know, folks, we're running out of time very rapidly, but I want to start with you, Marlene. Yes, Marlene, we do have an obligation to lead. I can't find the words to express my appreciation in having Wayne, Bishop, and yourself on here this morning. I think you guys in many ways have been very profound, and judging by the feedback I see out there in social media, the people out there do appreciate and they do respect what you're saying. And I hope, Marlene, that we can count on you. I hope, Bishop, that we can count on you, and you too, Wayne. I'm going to be calling on you guys again. I'm going to be like a tick in your behind. Seriously. You have a lot to offer, and we need people like yourselves. We need people like yourselves. I'm not going to ask you to come on here every Sunday, but what we started with Patrick Antoine and Pawnee Archibald, Alan Brzezinski a couple of Sundays ago, and Tessa Barry, we have to continue. This cannot be a one-off thing. And the role that you folks have to play is vital. So please, expect a call from me. Don't get mad when I call. Try and take my calls. Okay? Please.
George.
Grenada is counting on you. Yes, Bishop.
Before that sounds nice as a closing statement, but I don't know if that satisfies me, because two things. One, Wayne talked about this new project in Trinidad, the seed bank, if you want to call it that. And I'm very interested in that. But you see, again, it's a question of thinking outside the box, although when that expression was used, I said to myself, one of the things we need to do, especially where we're putting up these concrete monstrosities under the guidance of the Chinese, people are going to need to do some more box agriculture. Right there on the veranda of the house, So they need to learn how to think outside the box, but how to work in the box. You know what I mean? But that apart, George, it's not a question of you bringing us back on a program. There is a work to be done.
Yeah.
A work to be done beyond the television and the screening and all that. Some group of people has to bring together the people who think like Wayne, like Marlene, and so on and who are there.
And yourself.
And begin to dream a different dream for the region. Begin to do what was done in the 60s and 70s. And that has to be work. That is not just a question of coming on a program and something nice. And I hope the people who have listened to the program are not just going to be saying, hey, boy, I was listening to George the other day. A real nice program. To hell with real nice programs. What we need is action on the ground by people who know what to do. And Wayne, as I said, I have some things weighing heavily on my heart right now. One of them is what to do with church lands in this context. Some church lands, which I want to give to agriculture. Can you help me with that? Can you help me to discover what are the seeds that we could plant in that soil, which is not only about staple food, but which is about developing some of those fantastic fruits and so on that we lost, that we are losing. Mammy's deport and all them kind of thing. I don't know what they call them in Grenada. Still trying to find out. But those things are things which whenever somebody tastes it, they say, oh God, that is what it is, And they want more of that. You know. So anyway, I talk a lot. So
Bishop,
thanks, George, for the
Bishop,
always
to quote you, Bishop, we need a few people. Couldn't agree with you more, sir. And that is what I've been trying to do by assembling these fora, which I have over the past couple of weeks.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, that is what I'm trying to do. So, Wayne, thank you very much. Boy, you're persistent and you finally got up. Thank you very much, Wayne.
Okay, so final comment to the
Yeah.
bishop. You know, I can't come myself because I'm in lockdown, but I have a very good friend in Grenada. I will send him to you. Marley knows him also. Very good. He will be able to put that.
Say your phone number, please.
Yes.
We'll send it to you, Bishop. In fact, if we're lucky, he's actually listening to the program, so he knows himself.
All right.
He's far better than me.
Oh, by the way, Bishop.
Yes.
There's somebody in New Jersey who WhatsApped me earlier on in the program and asked me to say hi to you. His name is Richardson Franklin.
Franklin, I know the Franklin.
Yeah. I'm after the program. I'll contact you and pass on the information that he did. Thank you. And finally, Marlene, girl, it was worth the wait getting you on here. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, you're most welcome, George. Anytime.
Okay. Finally, Bishop, just so that you know, you're not the only preacher in this congregation. Every Sunday, I wrap up my programs with a passage from the Holy Scriptures. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share my passage right now. You can laugh as much as you want, but I don't wear the mitre and have the whip that you carry around and all of that.
There is no copyright on the gospel.
Okay, so today's reading comes from the book of Romans, Romans chapter 12, verses 9 to 16. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless. Do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. That reading, pilgrims, Romans chapter 12, verses 9 to 16. Yes, sirree. It's been a great 3 hours and 10 minutes. I thank each and every one of you for joining me this morning. And here's an invitation. Join me tomorrow evening and every weekday evening on YouTube, 8 o'clock, for the next series. Good night, Grenada. May the good Lord bless and keep you. Thanks again. So long.